The night of November 12 to 13, 1994, was dry and cold. Interstate bus number 217 was traveling along Highway 41, from the county capital toward the coast. At 10:37 p.m., the driver made a short stop, a roadside café and a small covered platform with a dim lamp. On the map, this point was simply marked as Rivertown Stop. A passenger by the window, Alina Sokol, 24, dark brown hair in a loose ponytail, light scarf, beige coat. Her bag, black, soft leather, lay at her feet, with the spine of a notebook sticking out from the side pocket. According to her seat neighbor, Alina barely spoke the whole trip, leafing through documents, jotting notes, making a couple of short, restrained phone calls. At the stop, 5 passengers got off. 3 headed into the cafe, 2 stayed on the platform, Alina and a tall man in a gray overcoat. He stood slightly apart, back to the road, smoking with his elbow tucked close against the cold. At 10:43 p.m. the cafe's camera recorded Alina entering, buying coffee to go, pausing briefly by the window, glancing toward the platform, and going back outside. 2 minutes later, the bus announced boarding. The recording caught the driver counting the returning passengers. Alina wasn't among them. At 10:48 p.m., the bus pulled away. Alina Sokol remained at Rivertown. The disappearance was reported the following morning. Alina's mother called the police station. Her daughter had not arrived, her phone was out of range, and she was expected at a work meeting at 9 o'clock. Patrol Sergeant Larry Milton arrived at the stop at 10:20 a.m. The platform was empty, littered only with ticket stubs and a plastic cup by the trash bin. In the cafe were 2 employees, owner Harry Lewis and night waitress Susan Morton. Both remembered the girl with the dark ponytail. She took coffee, asked where the restroom was, paid cash, went in, came out, and that was it. Lewis recalled another detail: she looked focused. Not like someone on vacation. When asked about the man in the gray overcoat, he said, "Saw him out of the corner of my eye. Smoking. Didn't come inside." Tire tracks were found by the roadside, but in truck season, that meant little. On the frozen ground behind the stop, there were no footprints. There were no cameras on the platform, just a single lamp and a rusty can where one might have been. However, the cafe's registered camera caught a fragment of the outside in the window's reflection. For a couple of seconds, the profile of a man, tall, about 6'3", short dark hair, overcoat down to the knee, light shirt, no hat. He stood motionless, facing the highway. Alina's bus neighbor, Karen Lee, confidently stated during identification, "Yes, he was on our bus. Boarded in the county capital, holding a folder. Didn't speak to anyone." When asked whether anyone saw Alina talking to him, testimonies differed. 2 said, "No," 1 said, "I think so, maybe a couple of words on the platform." Alina Sokol, an analyst at a small consulting firm. For the past 2 months, she had been working on a logistics and procurement project for a regional chain of building supply stores. In her notebook, found in her bag, there were transit diagrams, figures, and lists of contractors. The bag was not with her at the stop. The driver found it on the luggage rack after departure and handed it over to dispatch. In her apartment, everything was in order. On the kitchen table, a list of tasks for the week. No signs of a sudden trip or depression. Her phone last connected to the network at 10:41 p.m., coinciding with her visit to the cafe. After that, silence. Between 10:40 and 10:48 p.m., Alina moved between the cafe and the platform. These 8 minutes became the backbone of the entire investigation. At 10:45 p.m., the bus announced boarding. At 10:48, it left. Sergeant Milton checked intersections within a kilometer radius. There were few cameras, but at the entrance to Rivertown stood a state highway camera. At 10:46 p.m., it recorded a dark sedan, without a front license plate. Front plates are not required in the state, with the sun visor lowered. The driver could not be identified. The car entered from the coast side and left 6 minutes later, heading back toward the highway. Too little to call it evidence, but enough for the first theory: Alina got into a car, whether voluntarily or not. Friends rejected the idea that she might have disappeared by choice. She had a contract meeting, a bank appointment, and rent due, all tied to the coming days. Her credit cards showed zero activity. As for cash, the camera recorded her paying for coffee with a $5 bill and taking coins as change. Milton called Alina's ex-boyfriend, Pavel K. They had broken up in the spring, amicably. He provided an alibi, a night shift at a warehouse, verified by system logs. He was excluded from the list the same day. 5 days later, a man came forward who had seen the gray overcoat earlier at the Central Bus Terminal, Owen Marsh, an accountant. He was sitting across from him when the man pulled a ticket from his folder. Police traced the purchase. At 6:09 p.m., the ticket was bought for cash at the counter, under the surname Samuels. No ID was required for the purchase. By the 4th week, the case had stalled. Samuels was either a pseudonym or a coincidence. Inquiries in neighboring counties turned up nothing. Waitress Susan, re-interviewed, suddenly remembered, she, Alina, was standing with her back to the restroom door, as if listening to a conversation in the hallway. Then she quickly left. There was no conversation behind that door, just a narrow vestibule, old wiring, and a gap leading to a back staircase. It was on that staircase, a month later, that investigators found a piece of thin beige thread, almost the same color as Alina's coat. No blood, no signs of a struggle. The thread could have caught on anything. The firm where Alina worked finally handed over her project correspondence. Among the listed contractors was the transport company Lineway Trans. Rumor had it they were investigated a year earlier for undocumented shipments, though the case was later closed. In Alina's notebook were figures that didn't match Lineway's reports: a 2 to 3% loss of goods in transit. For retail, that's significant. In the address book nearby, the initials RT and a number marked night. Calling the number reached the voicemail of a man identifying himself as Ron Thompson. He confirmed, "Yes, we talked. I told her they had strange transfers at the southern warehouse. We didn't meet, she was heading toward the coast, we would have met the next week." The investigation cautiously developed a second line: Alina may have encountered something that witness Thompson referred to as strange transfers. It didn't necessarily mean a major crime, but enough of an inconvenience for someone to want fewer questions asked. Could the gray overcoat have been a contact or courier? Theoretically, yes. Buses often carried both people and small packages of documents. But there was no direct proof. Exactly 1 year after the disappearance, on the same day, a call came to Alina's mother from an untraceable number. A woman's voice said, "I'm not in town. Don't look for me here," and the line went dead. Technical analysis showed VoIP routed through 2 servers, origin undetermined. Police listened to the recording dozens of times. The voice resembled Alina's, but the forensic test could only conclude possible match. Her mother said it was her. A year and a half later, another woman went missing from the same stop, Lila Martin, 29. The scenario was similar: a night bus, a short break, café, boarding, and an empty seat. This time, the driver noticed she was standing with someone, tall, in a light jacket. She turned as if someone called her name. Once again, the café's register camera caught only a silhouette in the reflection. A local newspaper journalist connected the 2 cases. Police dismissed any serial link: too few matches, 2 different personal histories. But locals began avoiding the stop at night. Ron Thompson, the informant, suddenly disappeared from all correspondence. His number was disconnected. Attempts to reach his employer revealed something odd. A man by that name appeared on the payroll but hadn't been seen on site for months. He didn't answer his intercom. Neighbors said he went to stay with his sister. The sister denied it. It felt as if someone was carefully erasing traces. Sergeant Milton went back to the geography. If Alina did get into a car between 10:46 and 10:48 p.m., where could they have gone unnoticed? There's a dirt road leading to the river, through farmland, ending at an old freight terminal, with empty warehouses and a security guard sleeping in the booth. No cameras, and back then, no cell coverage. A search of the terminal yielded nothing. Only traces of old machinery, rusting containers, and oil stains on the concrete floor. Bus driver Frank Doyle kept repeating the same thing, "I walked the aisle twice. The girl who sat by the window wasn't there. I called toward the restroom, no reply. I waited an extra minute. The road's on a schedule." He blames himself, but by the rules, he's right. The driver isn't required to search for every passenger on the platform. He drives those who return by departure time. 2 years after the disappearance, an archived register from the café revealed one odd detail. On that night, someone paid for coffee and 2 hot dogs not in cash, but with a card, rare for 1994. The payment came from a corporate account of a small private security company registered on the coast. This company was sometimes hired to escort certain shipments. The owner, Remy Hughes, a former military man, lived in the county's south and ran a shooting range. Asked about that night, he answered vaguely, "We have a lot of runs. I don't remember." His bookkeeping was a mess, but in the log for November 12 was a note, Route 41, night. Statements from colleagues added another layer. A week before her disappearance, Alina argued with the project manager over a contract clause. She insisted on requesting actual routes and stamped waybills instead of spreadsheet reports. She was told, "Don't complicate things." She smiled, and still sent a letter to the contractor. No reply ever came. There are theories that don't make good movies: no chase scenes, no double-life intrigue. A woman steps onto a cold platform between a highway and a field. Around, 2 or 3 people, one smoking, another rummaging in a pocket. Someone approaches, says the right words, shows a badge, a document, or simply calls a name she heard the day before in a phone call. She takes a step, and disappears from the visible history of the world. Every year on that day, Alina's mother places a candle in the window. She isn't certain the call was real, but she believes her daughter's voice will be heard again. Alina's apartment has long been home to other tenants. The notebook with the figures lies in a box kept by Sergeant Milton, now retired, who sometimes wakes at night with a useless thought, "Should have checked those containers again." The case is not officially closed. In the file, pages of identification protocols, payment logs, photos of the stop, a windblown cup, a scrap of thread. On the last page of the report, a map, a red ink circle 10 kilometers in diameter around Rivertown. The legend reads, "Probable perimeter. No marks inside." Years later, the highway was widened, the café changed owners and its sign. The camera above the register now looks into the hall, and the platform has a new wide-angle camera. In the evenings, buses still stop there, people stretch their legs, buy coffee or chocolate, make calls, scroll the news. The lamp's light is brighter now, the asphalt newer. Sometimes, an elderly man in gray comes in for tea and sits by the window. He's not the gray overcoat, just someone fond of the color. He tells people that once, a girl disappeared at this stop. The new cashier nods politely. Stories age faster than people. The investigator who took over after Milton wrote 3 dry scenarios in a memo. The first one, voluntary boarding. Alina gets into a car with someone she knows or who shows a sign of trust, a document, a name. 10 minutes later, they turn toward the river. What happens next, unknown. The second one, coercion, subtle, quick, without witnesses, a grip on the elbow, a phrase like, "Your package is over there," a step into the shadow by the stairs. Without cameras, 2 people can vanish into darkness. The third one, Coincidence with another operation, something unrelated, a transfer, a small illegal deal, was happening at the stop that night, and Alina arrived at the wrong moment. Those involved removed the witness in the quickest way possible. He didn't write down the fourth, the one that never made it to paper, a mistake. When someone makes a sudden and irreversible move because of a wrong look, a wrong step, a misunderstood word. Stories like this have no neat ending. No final courtroom speech, no photographs at the precinct door. Only a half-tone, the quiet pause between the last, boarding now, and the dark line of highway as the bus, as always, moves on. In the police file lies one photo, the stop in late autumn, the empty platform, the café register, and a lamp in a tin shade. On the back, in pencil, it reads, Rivertown, 10:45 p.m. window, 8 minutes. Sometimes that's enough to keep a story from vanishing. Sometimes, it isn't.